Hey guys, it's Gary again. Decided I would do something a little different today that may be of very little interest to most of you actually. Well, I got a few videos I'm planning, but by two artists specifically, and I don't know if I should ruin the surprise or not, but it involves me doing a lot of listening to their works first. I really want to, because I notice, once I do a video on somebody, I'm thinking, well, I probably won't do one again unless it's a considerable time later. And what happens in some of the early videos, I was left with a lot of albums that I knew well, but I hadn't listened to for years. And when I made the video, and I've said this before, it caused me to start listening to those albums again and then think of a ton of things that I would have said about the albums had I listened to them freshly. So now I'm doing a little more preparation for each video, and as a result, I'm not doing as many videos. I have two videos planned by two artists that I won't say I listened to for a long period of time. So I've got to go back and revisit the works in one case, because one guy, I pretty much haven't listened to his works for maybe 2 or 3 years, and I had an intense period of following this one guy and buying up all his works that I could get at that time and listening to them. But now I want to do a video on him, and it's like, well, I don't have fresh memories of these albums. So I'm trying to listen to these albums, and I'll listen to like one CD or two CDs, and I won't get through them all, and I'm trying to make mental notes of what I should say about them. And then the second one is somebody that I bought a couple albums by back a number of years ago, and just had a couple albums, and then recently bought a box set containing 5 additional CDs. And so I don't have a real big career overview thing, but rather I've got about, I don't know, a quarter or a third of his material. And but 5 of the CDs are new to me, so I really want to listen to them and give impressions. Okay, so that's my preamble today. And because I've been tired lately, a lot of energy in these videos, I decided to do something different for me, and this is probably only going to be interesting for ECM folks. And I wouldn't say I found this recently, because I kept this and I knew where it is. I've gone on in the past about, I do have music playing in the background again, and I don't know, it's very hard to get a feel for what the appropriate volume level is on a video. Sometimes it's intensely loud to me here, and you don't hear anything at all on the video. I got some pretty experimental stuff playing in the background here, so you may hear an occasional smash of the drums and then not hear anything or something for long periods of time. So back in 1998, I guess ECM must have been on the internet, but you weren't able to order from them. And I want to say that's the case simply because I remember exchanging emails with somebody in ECM's mail order department, either that or the company that does their mail order stuff, about ordering CDs directly from ECM in Germany, because all these CDs were coming out, specifically of most of their older material, in Europe, and they weren't getting released here at the time. Now, since then, things have changed considerably, and most of these CDs I paid an arm and a leg for. Well, I think I did. I paid in Deutschmark, so I don't even know in 1998 what the conversion rate is. It wasn't necessarily a bargain. It was probably, I want to say, I did have to pay shipping too. It's probably equal to what they were charging in the stores for a CD. So maybe not outrageous, but then you realize I think my order was 32 CDs because I went nuts. I was working, obviously, and I decided to probably take about a month's pay, and I gotta have these on CD. And a lot of them were albums that I had. But I remember exchanging emails with somebody at ECM. They asked me for my address, and I want to say, I think they actually sent a paper catalog. So I guess in '98 they had, I don't know where I would have gotten the email address. So they must have had their website up, but that was before you could order from them. So I remember exchanging an email. I remember getting a catalog or something in the mail. I remember physically mailing something in, like an order form with my credit card number, which obviously you don't do that anymore. And waiting, I don't know, a month or two to get, because I see it looks like my order was placed in November '98 and they came in January '99. Man, I spent a fortune. I went nuts. I had to have these things on CD, and like most of them were albums I had. So here's the original, and it's weird because everything is in like just quadruple copies of everything. There's 4 copies of, you know, they don't do things like this anymore. And I always kept this. I'm glad I did, just to see the dates, because I wouldn't have been able to guess when it was. So here is the receipt that was, I guess, on the outside of the box that shows shipping taxes, passing through inspection. It was shipped premium. Came to my house in the U.S. from ECM Exports in Grafelfing, Grafel Fing, Grafelfing. And I don't even know if this would be a place that they do business out of anymore. The address right there. Can you see it? Not sure. My old address. So this was, I believe this was what was on the outside of the package. And this is why I keep these. Again, I don't have this in, I don't know how much I actually paid in American dollars, because everything is Deutschmarks. It seems like all of the CDs were pretty much 30 Deutschmarks at the time, with the exception of one, which was the Azimuth 3 CD box set, which again wasn't available here. Most of these CDs have become available in the US, but it took years and years and years, and I was a baby and I couldn't wait. And I just couldn't part with my money fast enough. So here's the ECM export. Again, there's like 4 copies, and I have 3 pages of, so this page has 6 CDs on it. The next one has 11 CDs on it, so that's 17. And the last one has 15 CDs. So 21, 32 CDs, right? 26. Yeah, I ordered 32 CDs with the Azimuth box set counting as 1 CD. So actually, what, like 35? That would be 35 then? I can add. There are 34 actual CDs if you count the box set separately. So I'm going to show some of these. I'm not going to show all of these, because some of these I have shown in general. I think I just hit one of the guys hit a clown horn on this record that I'm playing. That's what it sounds like. Some free jazz stuff going on in the background. So I'll show. There's a bunch. I'll read off what I got, what the order was, because it's just interesting to me. And some of these, most of these I'm not going to show because they're ones I've either shown already or I will show in future videos. Like the first one I am going to show, if I can find it, because I'm not sure whether or not I'll do a Gary Burton video. I already mentioned a picture of this. The first one is Gary Burton's Times Square, and this was unique because at the time, which I'm pretty sure this is available now in the U.S., this was the only Gary Burton on ECM that came out on CD, because there's still some that hadn't, that for some reason they decided not to distribute in the U.S., at least initially. Interesting quartet date, from 1970, it was released in 78. Not sure when it was recorded. I will open the booklet. January 78 it was recorded in, so it came out later in 78. So naturally it's got Gary Burton on vibes. It's called Times Square. This was an album release, obviously. Steve Swallow on bass, naturally at the time. Steve was on all his albums. Roy Haynes on drums. So it wasn't necessarily Gary Burton's regular working group this time around. And Tiger Akoshi on trumpet. So interesting, trumpet, vibes, bass, and drums. I often like Gary Burton's choice of guitars. I like his bands with guitars, but I'm also for some reason drawn to his quartets that don't have piano, and there's nothing wrong with the piano, but there's kind of a light airiness that I like when he uses, you know, a bass, a drummer, vibraphone, and like a horn instrument, which is like Picture This did, that one that still hasn't come out on album, on CD. And that was, you know, basically vibes, bass, drums, and saxophone. And just having that whole area that the piano would fill in, not there, lends a nice airiness to the whole affair, and you could really, vibes really come through then, because when you got vibes and piano together, they start to blend a bit. And there's some good pieces on here. You know, a lot of Gary Burton doesn't write a lot of originals, so he does a Keith Jarrett tune, Semblance, 2 Keith Jarrett tunes, Choral, a Jim Hall tune, Careful, a Steve Swallow tune, 2, 3, 4 Steve Swallow, 5 Steve Swallow songs on here. 1 Steve wrote with Roy Haynes. This is a good album. I mean, you have to like Gary Burton. It's not a huge departure, especially if you've heard his quartet works. But I like it. I like it. And for a long time, I think this one took a long time because I ordered these in '98. This took a long time, but I'm pretty sure I've seen this on regular online internet, you know, Amazon, CD Universe, Deep Discount, all those places. I think I've seen this finally released as an American thing. So that's the first one. I also in this nice big one, you can imagine what I didn't know what to put on first when I got the 32 CDs here. Some of them I ordered more than 1 copy of, but just a couple. Miroslav Vitas' First Meeting, which I'm not going to show because I've shown that already. That was another one, again, not available on CD in the US at that time. Terje Ripdal, Jack DeJohnette, Miroslav Vitas, To Be Continued, the second album they made, which I had on vinyl. But it took a while for that CD to reach our shores. John Sermon, Such Winters of Memory, one of my favorite John Sermon albums that's not a solo album. I had the vinyl on that. And also John Sermon's biography of Reverend whatever it is, because they cut off the title. Whatever the Reverend's name is, that's a solo disc. But and again, that took a while for that to come out on CD in the US. But the Such Winters of Memory, I really, really like. My favorite are his solo albums, but where he just plays all the instruments himself. But after the solo albums, Such Winters of Memory is right up there with The Adventures of Simon Simon, which is a duet with Jack DeJohnette. So I got that one. It's Such Winters of Memory. For some reason, I hadn't played that vinyl in a long time, so I remember that was really good hearing again. And another one that I did bring with me, Marilyn Mazur's Small Labyrinth, which again, oddly enough, was not available here in the U.S. at the time. And generally, Marilyn's larger band projects don't tend to come out on ECM. They tend to be small group and solo things that she does on ECM. And this is Marilyn Mazur's Future song, who I have some other CDs by that were recorded for other European labels. But this album has 8-piece band, counting Marilyn Mazur on percussion. It's got the great Aina Kemenas on voice on here, so how could I not get it? Hans Ehrlich on saxophone, Niels Petter Molver on trumpet, who's got his own solo career going. Ivan Arset, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but the guitarist that also now is recording solo for ECM. Keyboard player, Klaas Hoffman on bass. Auden Clevey on drums, who I think played with Terje Ripdal, and Marilyn Mazur on percussion. And Elvira Plenar on piano and keyboards. Future song, good album. So I noticed Marilyn is quite an interesting lady, and I love her. I really like her discs where she's playing mostly on her own. Some people, of course, it'd be hard to listen to just solo percussion, but she can really pull it off. And thankfully, her other albums that I have of her, Future Song, and I forget that she's got another band that come out on other European labels. Thankfully, they're pretty well recorded. A lot of the artists that record for ECM and then go on and record other albums for other European labels, the sound quality is really kind of not great on the other recordings they do for the non-ECM things, and you kind of let down. But I gotta say, of the recordings I have of hers that she does record for other labels, man, they still sound good. Which is something that's kind of needed for that kind of music. So that's the first 6 CDs right there. Getting into the next batch. Like I said, there's a lot I'm not showing here because I will show them in future videos, or I have shown them. Treasure Ripples, Whenever I Seem to Be Far Away, with that great album cover, which I had on vinyl. And again, that was one that was not available on CD here in America for a long time. So there's that. Colin Walcott's Cloud Dance, which has been available on CD for a long time, but initially it was not available in the U.S. So I actually had to order that from Germany, which surprised me, him being an American musician. Bar Phillips' 3-Day Moon, another one, took forever to come out here. Great album. That's my first ECM album, actually, was 3-Day Moon on vinyl, and that's what got me started into this whole thing. Bill Connor's Swimming with a Hole in My Body, again, I had the album. That one took forever to come out in the U.S. on CD. And I couldn't wait because my vinyl is fairly worn. It's a quiet album of just solo guitar, and probably my favorite Bill Connor solo album, so I couldn't wait to hear that again on CD. Rainier Burninghouse, Frigwait. You know, again, his first solo album for ECM, which I had on vinyl, but that one also took a while to come out on CD in the U.S. I didn't know if it would because he's a German musician, not very well known here. Steve Ellefson, the guitarist, Dawn Dance, which I had the vinyl, which was Steve Ellefson just on acoustic guitar, and Colin Walcott on percussion. Love that. Another one, you know, even though there's percussion on it, it's still a fairly quiet album, and you know, kind of wore that out a bit. Oh, another John Sermon one. Another solo album that took a while for him to come out, with Holding Pattern. Great. One of my favorite John Sermon solo albums. You know, and just another solo album of John on multiple saxes and recorders and things like that, and synthesizer. With Holding Pattern, took quite a while for that to see a U.S. release. And this one, which I knew nothing about when I bought it, and I just liked the description of it, duet album. Mikhail Alperin and Arkady Shulkowski, Wave of Sorrow. I just read, this is one of those albums I read the description of. I didn't hear it, didn't have it prior. This actually came out in 89. So it was already almost, 10 years old when I ordered it. But I had never heard it or seen it before. Mikhail Alperin on piano, melodica, and voice. And Arkady Shulkowski on French horn, jagged horn, flugelhorn, and voice. And I think the thing that sold me on it was the French horn, because I love French horn. So just a duet album, no other musicians, no percussion. So you know it's going to be one of those quiet, moody ECM albums. And piano and melodica, which I like. You know, I like the melodica if it's well recorded. The French horn and the flugelhorn, but especially the French horn was the thing that drew me to it. And I'm like, oh, I got to hear that. So I ordered this. I took a chance on it, and I've got several other CDs now by these two gentlemen that were not recorded for ECM. They've recorded a lot, individually and together, apparently, for European labels, little tiny European labels spread all over the place. And, you know, those albums that are so small, they go in and out of print all the time. But this is a good album, recorded in July 1989. Wave of Sorrow. I seem to recall it's got a little Russian flavor to the piano. Even gets like up tempo a little bit, excitable at times. You know, odd considering there's no percussion or anything. But yeah, that's a good one. That was a blind buy. What else? Oh, this is one from American Guy, and this is another one I was surprised that didn't come out, because the American Guy, Wadada Leo Smith, Culture Jazz. He didn't record a lot for ECM, and he didn't record a lot of solo albums that I'm aware of. And the thing that sold me on this, that again, I hadn't heard this. This is an all solo album, one of the few Leo Smith has ever done. There's no other musicians on here. It's got a 1993 date on there. It's a little political. I seem to remember there's some talking on this, if I'm not mistaken. And it's not necessarily, when you think of the ECM aesthetic, this isn't one that I would necessarily put on as a demonstration of that, because ECM does have albums that kind of skirt along that edge of that aesthetic. Sound-wise, it's the aesthetic. Music-wise, it's a little bit different if you consider things like the Art Ensemble of Chicago as being a little bit outside the aesthetic that you may think of when you think of ECM. Even Jack DeJohnette's Special Edition, the first 3 albums, that was just a horn band, because there's some free jazz stuff going on there, a little bit outside of the quieter ECM aesthetic. But this one I couldn't pass up, and I liked it right off the bat. And if you've ever heard Leo Smith in any context, and most of his albums that I'm aware of are band albums, then you gotta hear this. This is a fantastic album. And again, this one I did not check to see if it ever did come out in the U.S. But Leo Smith plays trumpet, flugelhorn, koto, the stringed Japanese instrument, mabira, harmonica, bamboo notch flute, percussion, and vocal. And this is produced by Steve Lake, not Manfred Eicher. Very interesting, especially back in '93. I don't know when Steve Lake joined, but ECM. But I didn't realize he was there already in '93. And not produced by Manfred. Very interesting. But this is, this is one of the, when I do these videos, all of a sudden I get the desire to hear specific albums. This is one of them. I should have put this on in the background too. But it's hard to select. That one, if you've ever heard Leo Smith and you like him, I recommend it. It's a little quieter because most of Leo Smith albums have drummers on them. What else? The one I'm playing in the background, which you probably can't hear, Philip Waxman and Paul Lytton, or Litton. Again, this is called Some Other Season, and this was a blind buy, but this is another one that skirts along the edge of the ECM aesthetic, because it's kind of free. It's kind of an experimental, avant-garde, free jazz duo, playing around with electronics as well. So, and especially at this time, because this is a 1999 release, electronics are not a big part of ECM. Probably more in their earliest days than in their later days. But Philip Waxman plays violin, viola, and live electronics, and Paul Lytton or Litton plays percussion and live electronics. So essentially, it's a violin viola player with a percussionist. Both of them double on live electronics. This would be a thing to say. I'm not sure whether or not the recording is actually live in the studio, whether they did overdubbing. It's very hard to tell with the live electronics because you don't know how much they're doing things with two hands and things like that. My feeling is it's probably a fairly live in the studio recording. It's nice because there's some slightly louder moments on this. But if you're a fan of avant-garde jazz, you've got to get it so well recorded. And during the quieter moments, and the electronics are in some of the quieter moments as well, it's really appreciated that you've got the sound quality associated with ECM records is there very much here, because the subtle stuff needs to be heard, and it's at times it's about ambiance and little else. You can't predict the chord changes because there pretty much aren't any. It's an interesting duet. And I remember reading about them at the time, and I think they've made other recordings together and apart, both of them. As a matter of fact, I want to say they were both members of a larger ensemble, and his name escapes me now, a saxophone player. But that they did record Evan Parker, I think. I could be wrong, but I think they recorded it as part of a large ensemble with Evan Parker, and if it wasn't him, it was somebody in his area. But I know that both musicians have played under somebody else's leadership. But again, I like small, two guys. I like hearing what two guys can do together. And my feeling is it's probably a live in the studio album. You got to be up for adventurous stuff where you're not going to hear chord changes. It's not screechy like free jazz. It's kind of hard to take. It's 60 minutes. It's an hour. A lot of it's quieter stuff, but it's definitely freeform. You can't predict it. And I never remember what it sounds like until I play it again. It doesn't stick with you. It's good. Great ECM cover too. Highly recommend it. Don't know. See, all of these have the ECM imprint on them, as opposed to the American. I don't know if this ever came out, to be honest with you. Here, I want to say I think it did. Okay, and on this second page out of 3, the other CD that I ordered, which I'm not going to show, is the Azimuth. First 3 albums box set. And we're on to the last page. Gee, and we're only 25 minutes into it. How am I going to stretch this out to an hour and a half like I normally do? Okay, here's a bunch of ones that I'm not going to show because I've actually shown others. Bar Phillips Mountainscapes. I had also ordered 3-Day Moon on the same order. So Mountainscapes was in this order too. I paid 30 Deutschmarks for each one of these, except for the Azimuth, which was 52. I don't know how much that means, actually, especially in 1998 parlance. Jack DeJohnette's Pictures. That I couldn't order fast enough. That was one that I kept on looking, and that one took a while for that to come out on CD in the U.S. And my vinyl, forget it, man. I had made so many cassette copies of the albums to listen to in the car and even at home over the years. I just couldn't get that one fast enough, and it did come out though. Eberhard Weber, Following Morning. That's the one with just Eberhard on bass, Rainier Burninghouse on piano, and a string section. Beautiful album. Again, I've worn out the vinyl. It's a pretty quiet album. There's no percussion. Couldn't wait for that to come out. Surprisingly, Ralph Towner's Batik album was, in America, Ralph said, pretty much one of his worst-selling ECM albums. He always associated that probably with the poor album cover. And oddly enough, at a time when all of his CDs were being released in America, that one came out on CD, but the Americans didn't pick up on it till years later. So I bought Batik because I love that. Bar Phillips, Journal Violin 2, or Violone 2. Again, that was one I couldn't wait to hear. You know, without the percussion, it's a quiet thing. Carm and me, we've played our vinyl through practically to the other side of the vinyl on that one, I think. And I couldn't wait to hear that in a quieter, context without the vinyl noise, because that's a Grail album for me for sure. So I was pretty excited by that. Jan Garbarik's Adventure album, which I had again on vinyl, but didn't look like it was going to come out on CD, which it did. That was just a trio with Nana Vasconcelos on percussion and John Abercrombie on guitar. Quite an unusual lineup. That was one of his better albums, I think. And this one I'm going to show, if I can find it, which I can't. Hey guys, what did I do with my album? My CD. I lost it. Here it is. Never mind me. James Newton. I was American. I was surprised this one didn't come out. Axum. This one came out on CD for a very brief time, because I remember seeing it come out on CD in the USA, and it got out of print almost immediately. Probably didn't sell well, but so what, you know? This is my favorite James Newton album. I'm no expert, but I've got a few of them. And he's recorded for other labels, mostly for other labels. This was recorded August 1981. I had the vinyl. And strangely enough, this might be one of the ones that I left behind accidentally, because going through my vinyl to find my vinyl for the videos I've done, I didn't come across this album. And I love that album cover, and pretty much a standout album cover. You kind of know it when you come across it. It's like a mosaic. Beautiful. But James Newton, August 1981, all solo. You know I'm a sucker for solo albums. Just James Newton on flute, alto, and bass flutes. I remember a few years after I bought that, I met somebody who was playing in, I guess it was a high school band as a flute player. You know, the standard metal flute that you see in schools. And this girl was really into flute, and I said, you've got to hear this album. I actually went out and bought a vinyl copy of this album, and she looked at it, and she was totally unaware that there was even such a thing as alto and bass flutes. Didn't even know it. Understandably, she's young, was a teenager. Great overdubbing on this. This is not live in the studio. This is really, using the full extent of the studio's capabilities. This is a beautiful album. absolutely beautiful. This is one that you put on a good night album because there's no percussion, there's not even piano, no bass, anything. It's just all flutes. Really, really fantastic album. And one of those things you don't have to be a jazz fan to appreciate. Very easy to get into. I hope this, every time I've looked at this is out of print. In terms of the availability in the U.S., I should say. But again, a lot of these albums that have gone out of print in the U.S. or aren't available are available as imports or through ECM, but they're very expensive. But I'm finding that you can get the downloads at very least. I guess it's better than nothing. Because I'm still mad. Harry Pepple had a solo album come out that I was unaware of, I think from the early 90s, that Carm has a physical copy of. And I only discovered it as a download, and I bought the download, and I burned a CD from the download. But I would have really liked to have the CD. But even when I went on ECM's website in Germany, it didn't list the CD as being available, strictly as a download. So, I don't know, Carman, you picked that one up at the 5 minutes that it was available, and I'm jealous for it. Fantastic, good late night album. This is another one that now that I'm talking about it, well, actually it is queued up, but I don't know if it's actually going to get any airtime during the course of this video. It's a beautiful album. You don't have to be into jazz. You don't have to be into classical music. I'd almost say that if you can appreciate like new age Steve Halpern stuff, but it's not meant to fall into that, but it's easy to appreciate. And I know that wasn't what James Newton's intention was when he recorded this album, to make a Steve Halpern-like album. But in terms of the accessibility factor, is really there. This is such a fantastic album. What next? I don't have that many more left. Pierre Farber, singing drums. This is another one that I did not have and I had not heard prior to buying it, even though it was a 1984 recording. So this was another blind purchase. And this is one of the few. I bought 2 copies of this because I have a friend that's a drummer, and I guess I bought a second copy to give to him. I guess I gave it to him. This is a long time ago now. This is why I keep my paperwork, guys. I would have never known what albums I had purchased like this, made this order from, if I hadn't saved this paperwork or when and where. But you can see the lineup. It's almost like Percussion Profiles in a way. A little more intimate than Percussion Profiles, which was George Grunson, 18 percussionists or whatever it was. But it's all percussionists. Paul Motion, late Paul Motion, Freddie Studer, Nana Vasconcelos, all playing various, drums, gongs, tune gongs. Bowed cymbals. Nana plays the more obscure stuff, the berimbau, timpani, water pots, shakers, bells. But all the compositions are credited to Pierre. So I guess he had worked something out with these guys prior. It's not a jam session. Interesting. You know what? I haven't played this for a while. And I'm probably going to be sorry because I'm going to put it on afterwards, after this video's done, and I'm probably going to be like, I should have said this or that about it. And I'm showing this just because I have a handful of Pierre Farber, probably not enough to do a video on him. So I'll show. That's why I'm showing the CD. Now we get into some bizarre stuff. Red Twist and Tuned Arrow. This is probably the hardest one to get into for me. It's Christina Doran, Freddie Studer, and Stephen Whittier. If any of you know the Japo label, which was, I guess, like ECM before ECM, the band Ohm recorded for them, and 2 of the members were guitarist Christy Studer and drummer Christy Doran, the guitarist, and drummer Freddie Studer, the percussionist. And so this is half of the band, half of the quartet, the Ohm Quartet, which I liked. I liked that band. This is a November '86 date. Steve, the third member on here, Stephen Whittier, or Whitwer, is also an electric guitarist who plays synthesizer. So it's got 2 guitars, the second of which plays some synthesizer, and Freddie Studer on percussion. And the tracks are all either written by the 2 guitarists. It's kind of noisy. It's not, and it's weird because the Ohm albums with Christy Doran the ones that I have and that I've heard, there's no real distorted guitar on there, rockish guitar. He uses a very clean, almost like Pat Metheny before Pat Metheny was around kind of sound. Not compositionally like Pat Metheny, but sound-wise. Later on, and I still follow Christy Doran, even though he's hard to pin down. You never know what you're going to get. I remember being slightly disappointed in this, a little bit noisy, kind of, a little bit more rockish than I hoped. But after this, I did buy additional Christy Doran albums, and I realized that Christy does go into this. I think he's even done like a Jimi Hendrix tribute album, so you can imagine what the guitar, which I didn't pick up, but I can imagine what the guitar sounds like on that. Some of the albums I did pick up by him after this, I noticed he was using more of a distorted sound, and others he doesn't all the time, and they're interesting, but most of his albums are pretty avant-garde and pretty free. And when I was first exposed to him in the Om group from the 70s, they were pretty much a typical European jazz group. Not too steeped in bebop, but very much fitting the ECM aesthetic. And it seemed like he changed as he went along, and he kind of got noisier. He's also done some, oddly enough, he's done another album, Christy Doran solo, called What a Band. So it's a play on the fact that, in fact, there's no band on the album. And it's an interesting avant-garde solo guitar album. There's some really just distorted tracks on there, some avant-garde things with looping on guitar. He's an interesting guy, but you can't expect to buy his stuff and like everything. You just never know what you're going to get. And I like that What a Band album, and it's on some obscure European label. And maybe someday, I don't know that I have enough of his material to do an overview, and I don't know that much on Christy Doran, but he's an interesting guy, and maybe I will do a video on him. It'll be a short one, because he has worked in odd permeations. This is one of my least favorites that he's done. I'm not sorry I bought it, because he's an interesting guy, and the recording quality is pretty good. This is one I haven't listened to in ages, so I'm going to give this a spin, and depending on how much Christy Doran stuff I have, I might end up doing a Christy Doran video. I have a few left. This one, I believe Carm showed this. And if I'm not mistaken, Thomas Demenga and Heinz Reber, Cell Organics. It's cello and pipe organ. I'm pretty sure this is the one Carm showed, and I thought he had it on vinyl. Now that's odd, because I'm not aware that this ever came out in the U.S. This is another blind purchase from me that I saw in the catalog. It looked interesting because I like the combination of that wild, big electronic sounding kind of pipe organ and the cello. I was not familiar with either musician. It's a pretty out there album. It's pretty avant-garde, but I really like it. Not sorry I bought this, but this was an album that I didn't think anybody else would really have. At least somebody that didn't have absolutely everything from the ECM catalog, because this is much more under the radar, obscure thing. Recorded in October 1980, came out in 81, and it's just 4 parts: Cell Organic 1, 2, 3, and 4, cello and pipe organ. And I have, I guess that's Thomas Demenga on something else, but I don't have a great deal of material from either one of these guys. Interesting if you like. Not free as in screechy necessarily. Avant-garde. It's at times almost all atmospheric. Again, I gotta give this one another spin now. I take these out now, all of a sudden I want to hear them really bad. And my room just went dark. Oh well, I can't do anything about that. What else? I got some weird. Did I mention that this is? I don't know if I mentioned that. This is the one that I've actually been playing in the background. Did I mention that? Yeah, the avant-garde. Philip Waxman and Paul Leighton. This is what I've been playing in the background. Where you can hear it. Every once in a while, my attention gets diverted because some quacky duck sound or something comes out from these guys. Because this is a freeform avant-garde album, and it just makes me stop in my tracks. Okay, guys, I only got 3 left. But my room got real dark because the TV went off that I was using for light. What else do I have left? Well, I've got these that Harold Weiss. what I don't know is Harold Weiss Traumageflüster, I think is how you pronounce this. I'm not sure. It's the only album he ever recorded for them. He is a percussionist, composer. And I'm wondering if Carm has this. This is another one of those, like Cell Organics. This is a really obscure ECM. The original vinyl, I'm sure, was one of those rare ones. This was recorded in September 1982. It's just Harold by himself playing solo percussion as he does performances of solo percussion and voice. It's the only album he ever recorded for ECM. I have a bunch of his others, and he is the guy that I have been preparing to do a video on. So I'll spill the beans. But it's a lot of preparation, a lot of listening to. I got into this funk with him a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and anything that I could get by him I got. Very interesting guy, very interesting composer. Honestly, this is his weakest album that I have. And I think it's because the standard ECM operating procedure at this time, and I don't know, it probably has not changed, at least for small groups, is you only get 2 days to record an album and 1 day to mix it. That was basically how ECM stayed solvent, and actually was able to recoup their expenses on their albums by having lower studio costs because they recorded their albums very quickly. By the way, that's the reason Pat Metheny left ECM. He knew he was making a lot of money for ECM because his records were selling quite well, but he didn't want to record albums that fast. He really wanted to use the studio. And apparently that's the one disagreement he had with Manfred Eicher, and there were other labels willing to sign him, American labels, simply because he would make a certain amount of money for them and give him the studio time that he wanted. So that's actually the reason why Pat Metheny ended up leaving ECM from what I've read. Back to Harold Weiss, this is pretty much, it sounds to me like it's live in the studio. This could have been recorded in one day in one pass. I'm going to do a Harold video, so I'm not going to go too much into detail on this, but I've seen film clips of his live performance, and it's very much like this. It's a lot of him kind of singing in his weird way, along with percussion. He can play a lot of percussion things, so the sound is very busy simultaneously. That's why it's hard to tell whether or not there's overdubbing in sections on here. There's almost certainly no overdubbing in other sections. It's very hard to tell. The whole thing is only split up into two pieces. One originally for each side because this is a vinyl release. The first side was 23 minutes and 27 seconds long, titled Part 1, and the second side, Part 2, is only 14 minutes and 51 seconds long. It's a pretty short album, and recorded in '82. And pretty out there. For the life of me, I can't recall whether or not this was my first purchase of Harold Weiss. For 2 weeks now, I've been listening to his music, trying to prepare to do a video, and it's just, I can't get past this. I don't know, things come up or whatever. So I've been preparing to do a video on him. I have listened to this one, but I'm trying to get through his others. Most of his albums are released on the Wergo label in Germany, W-E-R-G-O, which is a fantastic label, but it does not make it over to these shores, and you spend an arm and a leg to get their releases here, but it's a fantastic, almost more like a more experimental ECM label. Wergo is a fantastic label, but just totally unknown in this country. By the way, if you're really interested in Wergo, somewhere they have a mailing list that you can subscribe to, which I forget that I'm subscribed to. They don't send out too many notices. You might get a couple a year, maybe 2 a year or something. But every once in a while, I remember, I will get something from Wergo, and I'm like, oh yeah, I subscribe to that. So they don't send out a lot of mails. I don't know how big the label is. It's probably a smaller ECM size. I don't know how well they do in Europe or in Germany, but I wish their releases would get over here, but they don't. You have to buy them as imports. So I'm going to do, I've been meaning to do for weeks now, a Harold Weiss video, and he's definitely going to be, I guess, in that obscure musicians category. But there's so many things to listen to in his music, and he does a couple different types of albums that it's just really taken me a long time to get that done. Two more, and that's it. Holy crap, I've been going a long time. This is another one that, weird, I bought 2 copies of this, having never heard it. And I know the reason why is because I wanted to give this to my drummer friend. Robin Shulkowski, Hastening Westward. Robin Shulkowski is a percussionist, very much in the vein of Marilyn Mazur. And this is almost entirely a percussion album, with the exception of Nils Peter Mulver, the trumpet player, coming and playing trumpet on some tracks. And it's 62 minutes long. It's from 1995. It is a very interesting album. You have to be. It's very much like the Marilyn Mazur album that I forgot the name of, that she recorded mainly solo percussion in Jan Garbrick on ECM. Jan Garbrick came down and played on the album some, maybe about a third or slightly under half of the album. Jan Garbrick is featured on. It's very much in that same vein. If you have that album, that Marilyn Mazur album on ECM, and you can't get enough, this is the place to go. Hastening Westward is a fantastic album. And again, Robin Shulkowski is another, oddly enough, female percussionist, very much like Marilyn Mazur. Playing bells, that same world. Playing drums, but playing a lot of bells and unusual percussion sounds. Very much into that world. She bows cymbals. And Peter Mulver, recorded in January 1995, by the way. And at the time, this hadn't come out in the U.S. And it's got a fairly thick book for ECM that comes with it. There's a lot of pictures in here, and I can't really do this in reverse that well. See, I can't do that in reverse. Some pictures. For a pretty unknown musician, they did a lot of stuff on the book, on the CD book here. I want to say it's over 20 pages. And it's nice, you have to be into those kind of deep, dark, percussive worlds. It's not necessarily a highly rhythmic album. It's, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Great room where she's got her equipment set up, and there's Nels Peter Mulver playing trumpet there. I don't think that's the recording room. That's probably like a rehearsal room. Very much in the Marilyn Mazur vein. And I haven't seen other albums by her. Certainly not for ECM. And having never heard it, I still bought 2 copies of it right away. One to give to my friend, who's a percussionist, because I know this would open his ears a bit. A 62-minute CD. There's only 2 pieces, each with a number of parts. One is called Pier and Ocean, parts 1 through 3, and Hastening Westward, parts 1 through 7. Looks like 1 through 7. Roman numerals. I'm bad with them. But this is just, multi percussion. This is a really good. I really dig this. This is another one. Now that I've seen it, I'm going to play it again. One left. I saved this for last. AMM3. AMM was a band that I knew nothing of, and I bought it only because of the description. It's very free. They're a total improvisation group that was founded in 1965 with 3 guys. 2 of them play together here. 2 of the 3 founding members. Eddie Provost, who's a drummer, who's the only guy that is they're still around and they still perform as AMM. And Eddie is the only guy, the drummer, that stayed through all the incarnations of the band. And Keith Rowe, who was also an original member, is a guitarist who plays guitar, prepared guitar, transistor radio. He actually tunes radio stations in, like between the stations, and works the noise. It's free jazz, there's no doubt about it. They don't consider free jazz, but it's total improvisation, not based on chord structures or anything. And the band was founded in 65. There was a 3rd member, Lou Gare, or G-A-R-E was his name, who was a saxophone player, and that was the original trio that called themselves AMM, that started in 65. Their first album, I believe came out in 66, with the next one came out in 68, but they were adding musicians to it, so the albums may have not been trios, they might have been quintets even. Interesting. Now, I have their Wikipedia thing up here, which is interesting. It said, musicians were free to join in, but such collaborations were often short-lived if the contributions were lacking the proper spirit. Notable, jazz saxophonist Steve Lacy sat in with the group, but was quickly asked to stop playing, if you could imagine that. Let me see. Ornette Coleman sat in with them. He was asked to leave. after he continually talked during one performance. Talk at Paul McCartney once sat quietly through an early AMM session. When asked how he liked the music, he said it went on too long. Paul McCartney listening to it's totally free. This guy's tuning in a transistor radio. He's rubbing things up and down the neck of electric guitar. The percussionist is just playing sounds and noises. I knew nothing about them, and I didn't realize that they were a band that is still going on starting in 1965. The drummer now is the only original member. And the reason they call this AMM3 instead of just AMM was because at the time the guitarist Keith Rowe, who's on here, had left the group and leaving just the drummer and the original saxophone player with the group, and they added other members and I guess did recordings and tours for a number of years. Then Keith Rowe, the guitarist, came back into the group, but the saxophone player and founding member left. And they kind of wanted to maybe discern themselves because they had been established now without the guitarist, but with the original saxophone player, the original drummer, and some other members as AMM. So they called it AMM3 just to maybe differentiate itself from what people had gotten to know as being AMM, even though it does include 2 of the 3 original members. They had so many members come and go, though. And I believe right now, at last call, the band still existed with the original drummer and a piano player, a guy named John Tilbury, who joined around 1980 or so and has been with the band mostly since then. This was recorded in '79, so Keith Rowe had come back into the band. The original saxophone player, maybe they couldn't get along or something, left, and so it left AMM just 2 founding members, but the saxophone player had been with them for their whole history until this was recorded about in '79 when he left. After this point, Keith Rowe, the guitarist, also left, leaving just the drummer to carry on the group, which he did with John Tilbury, who is a pianist, and those are the only 2 members right now of the actual lineup. But they still add various people on. But the current John Tilbury pianist joined in 1980, and they had a fairly stable lineup for quite a while, actually, with the drummer Eddie Prevost, with Keith Rowe on guitar, and John Tilbury, the pianist. So they stayed stable for quite a while, but apparently now Keith Rowe has once again, he's still apparently around playing, but he's left, and it's down to the one original drummer who's been there since 1965, which is incredible, and John Tilbury, the pianist, who's been with the group since 1980. So Keith Rowe left in apparently 2004. Interesting about, I thought this was a group that like nobody knew. And it was just one, it's got to be an underground, I mean, how many free anything bands, it's very free, like I said, it's basically noise. It's very interesting avant-garde stuff. I think Chris Cole would be interested in this. I want to say Chris would almost certainly be interested in this, knowing his taste a little bit, the Phillips Waxman, Paul Leighton, which is playing in the background, and they're starting to make a lot of noise. Some of the others, but those specifically, I think would really be Chris Cole's thing. About AMM, to get back with them, apparently, I thought there's a little underground group that plays around in Europe somewhere, and practically nobody knows even in Europe, because this is not, I mean, even mainstream jazz is commercial compared to this stuff. So I don't know how many records they sell, but I bought an audiobook a couple years ago after I had AMM and I knew a little bit about their history. An audiobook which is, I don't know, 5 or 6 CDs. It was the full book that a Syd Barrett fan had written on the life of Syd Barrett, which included his death. It was written after Syd Barrett died. And in the book, he's talking about the underground scene that the original Pink Floyd came out of, the Syd Barrett era Pink Floyd. And if you know anything about Pink Floyd's history from before they started recording, before they made the first album, they were a very experimental group. They did a lot of free things with, Syd Barrett running things up and down the guitar neck to make sounds, and a lot of free-form stuff that was very popular, especially in the underground London clubs, which were pretty much the only place that Pink Floyd was known before their first album. And apparently, in that circle, in that underground circle in London, in that period of like '68, right in that period, AMM was huge amongst the musicians. They kept on in this audio book, and I'm sure it's in the written book as well, on Syd Barrett, called An Irregular Head, I think is the name of the book. A Very Irregular Head is the name of the book. I'm looking at it. It's up on my shelf. They keep on bringing up AMM. So the guy that wrote the book, very much, instead of just doing a history on Syd Barrett, he did a history on the London scene of the late 60s that the original Pink Floyd came out of, but not just Pink Floyd, what was going on musically. And throughout the book, they keep on mentioning AMM, and I'm like, that's incredible. Like, I thought these guys were known by no one. So apparently AMM was a very influential group in this tight circle, the small circle, but in this underground scene that other free musicians came out of, other jazz musicians came out of, but also some of the more experimental rock groups came out of, like the initial Pink Floyd before they recorded, before they really made their first album, and they started writing more song things. And AMM comes up so many times in the course of this book, which is very well researched regarding the late 60s underground London club scene musically, not just the rock scene. I was amazed. I'm like, I guess AMM was bigger than I ever thought. I thought they were just this little obscure band. But apparently were very influential to a certain group of musicians who, went on and continued to make music for many, many, many years. That's why I saved AMM for last, because I had a lot to say about them, and I don't have any other albums by them. Okay, guys, this is why I keep receipts, you see? I paid so much I paid like hundreds of Deutschmarks for this. 360, or is that just this page? I don't know. Because this one says 322. I paid a lot. I paid a lot for these, man. I probably blew a month's salary when I got these. Back in, I ordered in November. So that's what I was doing. Ordering in November '98. I got them January of '99, and I probably sat home and listened to these for a week. When you get that many CD, 32 or something like that, plus the 3 CD Azimuth set. This is why I hold on to these things, guys. This is why I like to hold on to receipts and things like that. I would never remember how big this original order was, or what was in it, or what wasn't in it. I just for some reason remember Jack DeShanet's pictures being the one thing that I had to order that I couldn't wait to see if it came out in the U.S. because I just couldn't get enough of that album. So, been listening to the Philip Watson and Paul Lighton album the whole time in the background. Whether or not you can hear it, I don't know. But never gone into any further. Okay, guys, it's almost an hour. Didn't mean to go that long. I don't know if this is going to be interesting to anybody, but more of a collector's ECM fanatic story, I guess. Okay, so I hope everybody's doing well. I will hopefully at some point get through those Harold Weiss CDs and do a proper overview of at least what I have by him. Apart from that, thanks for watching. I hope everybody's doing well, and peace. I'll see you soon.